Hello, hello. I'm here today in the Tier 10 American Reward Cruiser, the USS Salem. We're here on the map Sleeping Giant. The mode is Domination, and we're in 8 to 10 matchmaking, so we are top tier in mixed matchmaking. Spawning here on the, I guess what I would call from north spawn, the western side of the map, above that ring cap. Now, the USS Salem is a long-time premium at this point, having released in late 2017 to early 2018 the first Tier 10 reward ship to be introduced into the game. She can be purchased from the armory for the cost of 24,000 or 240,000 coal, give or take. I think it's 244,000. And is functionally identical to her sister ship in the tech tree, the Des Moines, on most characteristics, but does differ in several key areas. Now we're against a Percival, North Carolina, Bismarck, Odin, Vladivostok, so complete Tier 8 battleship and carrier lineup, and then a Minotaur, Donskoy, Amalfi, Talon, Fletcher, Z46, so extremely favorable matchmaking considering there are very few Tier 10s at all. Looks like just myself and the Minotaur on each team, and then just 9s and 8s to make up the rest of it, so obviously I'm going to have to try and pull my weight quite a bit. Now the Des Moines, of course, and thus thereby by extension the Salem, is a extremely formidable tier 10, so this should be hopefully a bit of a piece of cake. Now I'm running range module, as you can see on my Des Moines, or on my Salem rather, compared to the Des Moines base range of about 15.8, I have 18.4. Now with the slow, lazy, and arcing American shells, this is not particularly useful against most targets at range, but against battleships, still more than sufficient, and it allows me to have some extra reach in the opening stages of the map. Do have to be careful that North Carolina over here it can actually shoot at me, though I'm not currently spotted, so I'm making use of that range. Now I choose to spec the Salem out with that range, just to increase my operational radius, especially towards the beginning to mid stages of the match, when it's a bit less brawly. Getting a fire there. Now the Des Moines and Salem's HE is nothing too special, just 2800 HE alpha. You can see here, the Bismarck does quickly DCP that fire. But thanks to the Des Moines class cruisers, 5.5 second base reload, it can fairly efficiently stack some fires within a short period of time. Now I don't have any special penetration or anything, so with 203mm rifles I do have about 38mm of penetration. So enough to penetrate superstructure quite obviously, which is 19mm, but also the bow and stern of most battleships. The Bismarck, however, with her 50mm middle deck, will be able to shatter some amount of my shells, as you can see from my shells shattering as we speak. There's an Amalfi out on the flank where I was, just trying to relight my fire. I'm going to kind of ignore that position. The fact that I'm spotted means the Amalfi has gone out a bit wide. The fact that I go undetected as I duck back behind cover tells me he's not so far out wide that he'd be over here or anything. Looks like some retaliatory fire does head toward me, but having moved forward with my propulsion unit, I am quite safe. Fletcher decides to pop up in front of me for some godforsaken reason. I'm going to run my radar to make sure there's no downtime on us shooting him. Now I have an 8.5. Okay, he detonates, I think. Yep. So I have an 8.5 kilometer radar. I'm going to switch to armor piercing with Halsey, or in this case, John Doe. So this differs from the 10 kilometer radar of the Des Moines, punching through with that super heavy American armor piercing to score 3 quick citadels. He's still not angled enough, and my radar is still running, plus he fired, so he has gun bloom, so he's not really paying attention, looks like. Just gonna stick with the AP, make sure he doesn't angle or under angle. He does finally range out his gun bloom. My radar had already ended. It was only about 10 seconds left when he popped his smoke. But we do know there's a North Carolina in front of me. I can't quite see it, but I am quite safe on this corner, and these kinds of corner holds are fairly familiar to Des Moines class cruiser players. The Salem, being a Des Moines class cruiser, is no different. Now if my nose pops out, the North Carolina will be able to shoot me, but you can see from his position that he's actually tucked behind that cover. So I'm going to take this time to push forward quite aggressively so I can finish off that Amalfi. Turning hard in, don't want to crest the corner with the North Carolina necessarily. I still have cruiser armor. The Des Moines has 27mm extremity plates and a 30mm midsection. I can bounce off that 30mm midsection, but the 20mm plate, or the 30mm plate, that is, will be able to ricochet my midsection. Will be able, the 30mm midsection, sorry, mind my English, will be able to ricochet North Carolina 16-inch shells, but my 27mm bow is quite vulnerable. Now he did just fire for some reason, so he has about a 28-second firing cycle with adrenaline rush at this current hit point pool. I'm gonna aim high, but I'm close enough where I can citadel him if I really want to. I'm gonna try and make use of that super heavy American AP, but he does die before I can dispatch him, so quickly switch back to high explosive. Looks like this game has developed into a bit of a stomp fest, which is unfortunate. Enemy Minotaur does manage to dispatch my Vladivostok, so that might change things somewhat. There's a missing Dmitry Donskoy around here. Now the Salem, as a Des Moines class cruiser, does have a raised citadel, so I am vulnerable to AP from battleships and cruisers if they catch me off guard. I'm not quite able to catch him off guard, so he does manage to turn out. Still putting quite a bit of pen damage into him. He's trading with me with HE, however, the Salem is the king of cruiser trading because the Salem, in exchange for having that inferior 8.5 kilometer radar set, unlike the Des Moines 10 kilometer radar set, has a super heal. Now it's not a full-on super heal, unlike the normal super heal of the Minotaur, say. Click pick up our third kill there, ricocheting those Donskoy shells with fair ease. They're down to 5 points. So as a not normal super heal, I'm going to nail this Percival instead of nothing to shoot at the moment. You still do heal that super heal amount, so with the Salem's 50,000 hit point pool, the super heal heals about 25,000. Need to be careful, I'm showing a fair bit of side to that Vladivostok. Scoring a fire on that carrier over there. So we still do have that heal capacity, however, unlike the Minotaur, which is able to queue up to 50% of damage, that is Citadel damage, and heal it, the Salem only is able to heal 10% of that health, so it has a Conqueror heal. Same goes for penetrations, you only queue 33%. So a normal healing amount in terms of what is healable HP, but the heal itself is able to heal up to 50% of your health. This means if you mitigate Citadel damage, as in the case of cruiser trades are typically going to end up being decided on just raw penetration damage rather than Citadel damage under most typical cases. So as a result, the Salem is extremely potent at those cruiser trades. Now, taking a fight with a Vladivostok up this close is a bit dangerous. I don't really have the penetration power to challenge his belt armor, and his 16-inch or 406mm shells do punch right through my 27mm bow. I'm going to slide out just enough to engage him. He doesn't have that great rearward gun angles, trying to get some shells into his superstructure. Looks like I'm not getting much luck here, so I'm going to try for that 32mm stern section. Most of the Vladivostok is armored, but his stern is quite lightly armored. He's throwing broadside now, however. So I'm going to switch back to the armor piercing. With that American improved auto bounce angles, should be able to score some quick pens. Oh, he's turning away again, making use of my short reload there. He's already on fire in the midsection, so I'm just aiming for this sternward section here. Try to score stern fire, or otherwise score stern penetration damage. Slowly playing with him. He's not really shooting at me. Shattering my shells though on that Vladivostok armor. He popped a heal. Trying to score a couple of pens into that butt, but looks like someone else is going to finish him off. Not too much in the way of the Salem's defensive power there. The game was just such a steamroll that I didn't really have to do anything. Never even really had to pop a heal, and a very conservative 105,000 damage with 3 citadels, 163 shell hits, 3 kills, 4 fires, and 2 target hits. Now before we continue, just going to quickly go over the build. Don't pay attention to that. Now here, of course, is the Salem. Armor-wise, as I mentioned, as an American Heavy, 27mm extremities. So she can ricochet up to 380mm shells. The midsection is 30mm, courtesy of the IFHE rework. We did receive an improved midsection armor section, so the upper deck, or the deck and the upper belt is now 30, which means you can bounce up to 16-inch shells. Anything bigger with 457s, 431s, or 460s will still punch right through, however, and your citadel is quite raised. If I strip away the armor and leave just the citadel, you can see in this port the water line is here, where the blue meets the red, and the citadel is a raised box that extends quite far above the water line, so very vulnerable to getting citadels if you do show broadside. So angling is quite important. Module-wise, as I mentioned, I am running the range module at the moment in slot 6, but that aside, first slot, main armaments. The Salem is a gun cruiser, so you do want to add HP to your guns. Slot 2, if you have a special radar module, you can extend the action time from 40 seconds with that 8.5 second radar to 48 seconds with a radar special module. Some people also opt to take hydroacoustic instead of radar whatsoever and just play the Salem as a heavy pushing cruiser, so that's also a viable option. You can mount a special hydro if that's your preferred preference. If you don't have either, then just go for engine room protection. Slot 3 is kind of personal preference as well. You can go for aiming systems for a bit better accuracy, or you can go for turret traverse. Now the Des Moines turrets are fairly large and heavy turrets, so even with expert marksman, the turrets still turn rather slowly, so I opt for turret traverse since it no longer has that reload penalty. However, aiming systems is also quite viable. The AA module is no longer really worth taking in this current iteration, so we ignore that at the moment. Slot 4, we have propulsion module. As you saw, the Des Moines does start and stop quite a bit, so getting that extra boost to your propulsion coming from a full stop is quite useful. Slot 5, concealment. Now you can't really stealth radar with a short 8.5 kilometer radar, but because you do want to travel between various pieces of cover, because of the Salem's relatively fragile armor scheme, having as good concealment as possible does allow you some more ease of use in terms of traveling from piece of cover to piece of cover. And lastly, slot 6, you can kind of play around with it. Some people prefer reload, some people prefer range. I prefer range on the Salem personally because she's a rather defensive ship, and you can kind of just root yourself into a position from which you can fire from cover with impunity, as you saw me do there on the corner versus that North Carolina and that Bismarck early on in the last match. Captain-wise, I only have a 16-point captain currently running John Doe. Halsey and John Doe both make excellent Salem or Des Moines captains. So 10-point captain, priority target into adrenaline rush into superintendent for an extra heal charge of that super heal. Into concealment expert. From there take expert loader since it's improved, so you can get your reload down to something quite absurd, roughly about 0.7 to 0.5 seconds. And then expert marksman to improve that sluggish turret traverse. This is the core 13 points, and from there you can build whatever you really want to with your last 6 points. Various mixes of a radio position finder, plus jack of all trades, so you can run preventative maintenance, plus maybe incoming fire alert, plus a 3-pointer, demolition expert, basics fire training, and survivability expert, which is my choice of module, are all options. Last stand also potentially viable if you are particularly concerned about having your engine suddenly knocked out. Now, survivability expert is not overly efficient On cruisers, the Salem, even without it, has about 49,800 health points. But even so, because of the nature of the Salem, which is a brawling cruiser, which tends to do a lot of fighting, every last bit of HP counts when you might be having multiple fights over the course of a match. And it also does slightly improve your super heal, so you get a little bit more out of it to help with that extra HP. Now, so overall, it's not grossly efficient. Some might find the 2% improved fire chance to bring your fire chance from, I believe it's 16 with flags up to 18 with flags to be more of a critical improvement, but I really don't care. I find that short 5.5 second reload means that taking and not taking Demolition Expert basically has no difference, so I prefer that extra bit of HP just to eke out that extra bit of endurance in some of the games. The Des Moines class cruisers are not lacking for firepower at all, so anything I can do to improve my survivability, on the other hand, is something I will readily take, no matter how slight it might be. Going to queue back in for one more, see if we can do a little better. Last match was fairly simplistic in terms of the overall complexity of the situations that unfolded. And we were the only tier 10, and my teammates end up rolling them. Alright, looks like we're on Ocean, which is interesting. So Ocean obviously means I have no cover whatsoever. Thankfully, I have the range module, so I can at least operate from range. No carrier this time, so no spotting at will, but there's a triple Thunderer with 457s and 2 GKs to worry about, as well as the Yoshino, Venezia, and Moskva, all 3 of which are fairly good long-range combat units. Spawning in the center, I'm probably going to move towards this northern flank, since I'm slightly closer to the north than to the south. Actually, considering that I have 2 cruisers up there already, I'm going to move south with that Zao, but in this context, as an open water ship, the Salem's not great open water, but at least we have the endurance of that heal, so we can kind of go dark and fade into concealment if we do it properly. A lot of that island hopping endurance is going to be somewhat lost. But we'll just have to play carefully, and in this case make use of our 18.4 kilometers of range. There's going to be a lot less in terms of cruiser brawling, so I imagine I'm going to have a lot less AP damage compared to last time. I will more than likely mainly be firing my guns from just the open, so just have to be very careful about calculating how much damage I can take and when I should take risks, especially with 3 457 armed Thunderers who will cut through all my armor like butter, thanks to the properties of Overmatch. Shimakaze contesting A, so I know something inside of A. You can see my detection's already almost there. I see 2 of the Thunderers, so I assume that's the Division Thunderers and a GK up north. So we have a GK that's left and a Thunderer that's not in division here. The enemy destroyer is briefly spotted. It's that RF Sommers. Or it's the KFL Sommers, sorry. Moskva also lit up, and there's that last Thunderer that we were talking about. Now the Des Moines class cruisers have excellent forward angles, the rearward angles are somewhat more poor. So I don't want to get too close. My detection is just about 3 kilometers off the Sommers, and the Sommers has 16.5 kilometer range torpedoes. So I do need to start adjusting my course now. Shimakaze leaves the cap for some unknown reason, in spite of there not being a radar, maybe to reposition to launch some torpedoes. He already launched them, however, which is a bit of an oddity, so I don't really see why he would move out. Maybe he needed to dodge some torpedoes. Oof, some extra stray torpedoes coming in from God knows where. I guess these might be, maybe these are the Shimakaze 20s. So there's a and indeed there's a Shimakaze over there. thinking about whether I want to fire, my Shimakaze is laying down a smoke screen, which means I can kind of fire with impunity. Nothing, however, is currently in range thanks to the standoff distance. I'm not willing to get close to engage, so we're just going to work on this. Do land some stray shells onto that Shimakaze. Oh, to get spotted. One of the ships has gone wide. Pumping into my engine, but I don't have that Des Moines legendary module. Kind of staying at range. You can see my shells going a little short. Even battleship-sized targets at this maximum range are difficult to handle. Scoring some shatters, but they are kind of straddling the edge of my effective range. Yoshino might beach against that GK, which will allow me some time to shell him. Kind of just spraying him all over. One of my battleships does go down. Probably took some torpedoes from these Salmers. Shells eventually landing on that RF Yoshino. Torpedoes continuing to spew outward. Shimakaze briefly spotted. I only have one gun online because I have gone rearward in. When I don't have hard cover to work with, much safer to just go rearward. He does catch one of my allied Shimakaze's torpedoes, however. So we have quite firm control of this cap now, so I'm actually going to move north from this point, not going to pursue downward. I'm going to intercept. I want these guys to kind of push toward me and to play from as long a range as possible. You can see my allied Venezia up there is in quite a bit of trouble. I don't know what the heck he's doing up there, but he's going to die for his sins. I'm going to start railing on the Thunderer. There's currently a smokescreen between me and him. So even with my enormous 18-4 kilometer gun plume, should be able to farm him for a little bit. My Yoshino goes down. So that's both cruisers on that flank already eliminated. Scoring a fire and some penetrations onto that Thunderer. Dodge that slow-moving torpedo, which is a shimmy 20. Oh, I see a DCP on that Thunderer. And he's only at 14 kilometers now, so you have to be a bit careful. I don't think he just fired. I think that was someone else. So I'm going to make what is a dangerous turn. You can see the Venezia fired at me, but with that Salem super heal, even if I take superficial pen damage, it's not going to be too much of a concern. Do rescore fire. And I've completed most of my turn at this point, so I can disengage with relative safety, still giving broadside to that Thunderer. Triple fire on the Thunderer. I'm sure he's pleased about that one. And with that uniform 32 millimeters of armor, I can cook him alive. Now normally I would actually switch targets over to a different ship in order to get my efficiency up, but I just want to focus him down because right now my team's in a bit of a deficit. So just taking him off the table is more important than the efficiency of my damage farming. Looks like he should be dead from there. Gonna move on to the GK. You can see my rearward angles are not nearly as good as my forward angles. I can very easily take pen damage, even if I don't take citadels at this angle. The GK, however, is not currently paying attention to me. Scoring 2 fires, not at a range where I can efficiently farm him with AP though. Watching my priority target very carefully, and more importantly, there's a Thunderer over there that I'm currently giving broadside to. 5k with AP pens. If I can take this GK off the board, that should be pretty nice. Gonna switch temporarily to HE, switch over to this Thunder while I adjust my angle. Don't know who's actually targeting me, because neither the GK or the Thunderer have shot at me yet. You can see, even from 14 kilometers, the range is a bit challenging. Okay, the Thunderer is not shooting at me at all. I'm rather confused, but I will take advantage of this. That GK that I lit earlier is going to drop. Fire onto the Thunderer. I would imagine I have his attention at this point. Angle. I can still ricochet off his belt armor, if needs be. After all, I'm going to take some of my guns offline by angling. That's alright. He's on the run. Just going to try for my fire. You can see my teammates also railing him with HE. That's a lethal fire over there. So I'm going to switch to that Des Moines, who might take some torpedoes. Looks like he's turning away. Or my shells are under lead, not quite paying attention. His shells are headed toward me with AP, but I'm turning in to face him. Remember, the Salem basically wins all cruiser-on-cruiser trades. Especially if it comes down to HE fire, because of that incredible super heal. As long as you don't take citadel damage, by making a mistake, you will be fine. Bit of poor marksmanship on my part, but we should be able to finish this guy off. Ricocheting shells off my bow. Now we'll move on to the Moskva. We're just on the edge of the GK's range. So I'm just going to start roasting him. Oh, we're going to bow in. Now I know we have AP loaded, but I'm just going to empty the barrels anyway. He drops. And now there's that Moskva, who we set on fire earlier, who just fired at us. And we're chasing. He's actually faster than me in a straight line. That's quite alright. As long as he sticks with HE, I really don't care. Relight that fire. I have a 5.5 second reload to his 8. Now he does have superior ballistics, which means he can quite easily take advantage of my lack of ability to chase. Just going to pop a heal at this point, just to make sure I have one again later, in case I want to reach for it. Make sure I'm topped up if I'm going to be continually engaging. Relight a fire. Showing quite a bit of broadside. So I'm going to switch to the armor piercing, score another fire in the midsection. The GK is steadfastly ignoring me, so slamming him with my armor piercing with that super heavy American AP, and that will be the end of that. Very efficiently farming up a storm. We're still up a slight amount of points, but you can see the enemy team has kind of removed a lot of ships from the equation. Scoring a fire onto that GK. He's moving away, so I have to start cutting down toward that cap. I still have a lot of endurance on my ship left, but I need to be able to make use of it. Targeted by one person. Now remember, I have that 30mm midsection targeted by 2. It's probably the Thunderer. So now I have to start paying attention to there. There are the GK's shells. Taking some on the nose, but at this range with only his rearward turrets, I'm not afraid of him whatsoever. maintaining pressure onto the GK, as before. Angling slightly so that I can potentially ricochet shells off his deck. You can see there that he's not on fire, and that suggests to me, of course, that he has used his damage control. Again, targeted by 2. I'm going to slow down here at this point. Thunder is quite close already. Just looking to score fire. Don't want to close the distance too much, make things too easy. Do score fire. You can see my angle is not quite properly adjusted to the GK. Thunder is shooting HE at me for some reason. GK using its quite large healing potential. It's just myself and 2 destroyers now. My team has thrown away a lot of their health. Sadly, at this point, it's hard for me to do anything. Need to wait. I'm gonna pop a heal again, just to make sure it's on cooldown. Do score a high caliber. Going to take some damage. I'm broadsiding. Waiting for those shells. Damage control because of the fire. Stay angled until the shells land, but I do under angle by a little bit. And as you saw there, I took 20k. I had to disengage because my allies were no longer around. My battleships this game a little irresponsible. At this point, I'm too low to really do anything. This game is kind of on the heavies, or on my Sommers now to attempt to win by torping his way to a victory. I'm gonna wait for a heal and then I'm going to attempt to engage. But with Thunderer this close, it's extremely risky. Typing some commentary, more or less. Gonna pop my heal and open up. Do score fire on my first salvo, so I'm actually gonna go dark after. He DCP'd. We're gonna wait. Damage control immediately. Don't want any of that. DCP on the GK is now over. So in terms of trying to win the game, the option is to kill him. Scored my fire on the first salvo, which is great. But he did pen me for 4k. So slowing down to a full stop to dodge shells only works once, basically. He is gonna drop. Let's see if I can score fire onto the Thunderer. I'm down to 600 health, however, and the Venezia has much greater long-range prowess than me. But we did stall out the game for another 2 minutes. If the Sommers can maybe get something done. If the Somers can wait till the Somers contest him and stay in the cap. So what we can have him do, we know the Somers is taking the cap at sea. So he can leave the cap and just contest it. Uh-oh. So I would have preferred that he ran, because this guy has a Venezia on his side. He can juke the first salvo. If he wins the duel without taking too much damage, he needs to fire one more time. He should accelerate right now and turn in towards the enemy Somers. Oh, okay, the enemy Somers smoking him is... Oh, he has the smoke still, okay. Well, I figured you could have just ran down south. We are going to end up winning, assuming he survives, for 44 seconds. So we are going to end up winning with a high cal, which is a shame. I'm looking for a high cal and a dreadnought, which involves, surviving the game, but, you can't complain. 254,000 on an open water map. Obviously, you saw me farm my little butt off. Thunder is spraying that smoke. Nice to get a win out of this match, however. But really, the endurance of the Salem somewhat tested there, but because I couldn't make use of cover, really had to stay open water. But I guess you get two contrasting games of playing with cover and playing without. This game was quite close, but there were enough intelligent plays made on this game for us to actually scrape by with a victory, surprisingly. Obviously, toward the end of the match, I was not quite sure we were going to pull through, but the combined efforts of myself and the last few players did allow us to score by. So anyhow, 254,000 damage, not too unsurprising for a Salem. 3 citadels, 331 shell hits, 3 kills and 16 fires for a Witherer and high caliber. Team score wise, 2,400, just shy of 2,500, and the Somers above me doing a nice job to pull it together. Damage distribution wise, as I did suggest, was probably going to happen. A lot of my damage was high explosive, and in this case, also 94,000 damage in fires from farming all those battleships. You can see here the GK alone taking 30k fire damage, this Thunder taking just shy of 30k, Moskva even taking 13,000, so quite a bit of dot damage because I'm not able to use cover to kind of play that ambush role that the Des Moines class cruisers would like to otherwise. I am pleased with that last game. It's kind of rare to see that kind of correct decision making to try and win the game these days, so very much pleased with that. And yeah, that's the Salem. She seems to be a bit unpopular to pick up as a coal ship with ships like the Thunder and such, and Georgia and such in the armory, but honestly the Salem is an extremely powerful ship, and does happen to have a niche and competitive as well if you're interested in that. So I hope you enjoyed the Salem games. Kind of been taking it kind of chill lately, not doing too much with the content production. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will catch you all later. Cheers.